Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are grateful to have you here on this Thursday morning. As you are getting settled, we would love to learn a little bit more about who you are. If you can please share your name, county or agency, organization, and role with the IP CANS, Integrated Practice CANS, and or child and family teaming in the chat. We would love to see that. And it looks like I shared that prompt just with our host and panelists. So sharing again in the chat. Thanks so much. You are here today for the third of our CFT and CANS Fidelity webinar series webinars. The focus of today's webinar is development of the County Practice and Improvement Plan, or CPIP, strategies, which is the plan that folks will create after they move through the County Practice and Improvement Plan process, and use of the Technical Assistance, or TA, activity guides. This webinar is 2 hours long, so we will be here from 9 to 11. We have a lot of content to share, and we are also really looking forward to hearing what questions you may have. So as you are moving through our time together today, reminder that this is a webinar. So the presenters and panelists, you can see us, we can come off mute. Folks who are participating can use the chat. You can ask questions using the question and answer feature. You can also put questions in the chat, but it's a little bit challenging for us to see them with everything else that goes in the chat. So it's very helpful if you have a question to please use that Q&A button or ribbon so we can keep track of which questions have been answered and which questions may still need to be answered. We do have a materials link for today. I think my partner Sahar has shared that in the chat already. If not, it should be there shortly. And as she said, the slides and recording for this webinar will be updated in a few days to our IP CANS and CFT Fidelity webinar series and Learning Lab website. That link should also be shared in the chat. On that page, you will find the recording and materials link for our past 2 webinars, and we do have a Learning Lab coming up next week following this webinar as well. My name is Emma World Peace Black. I am your host for today's webinar. I work as a Child Welfare Workforce Development Manager with the UC Davis Northern Training Academy. I come from a practice background in child welfare, working as an ongoing social worker, supervisor, and CFT meeting facilitator. I'm grateful to be joined today by 3 co-presenters and a phenomenal guest. Shelley Paul, would you like to come off mute and say hi?
Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here with you.
Shelley Paul is a CFT CANS technical assistance provider and consultant, also works as a trainer and is a phenomenal member of this team. We are also joined today by Robin M.A. Robin, would you like to say hi? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I clicked it. Hi, everyone. Robin M.A. with the CFT and CAN support unit. Excited to be here. CDSS.
Thanks so much, Robin. Also joining us today, April Fernando.
Hi, everyone.
And we are joined today by a special guest that you will meet shortly, Allison Hendrix from Tulare County. Allison, you want to come off mute real quick and say hi?
Good morning, everyone.
Great. Joining us as well are many other folks from the CDSS CFT CANS support unit. They will be assisting with answering questions that come in through the chat and Q&A feature. So thank you again so much to everyone who is joining us this morning and our phenomenal presenters. This is what we will be covering today. Welcome. Again, we are so excited that you're here. We've got about 150 people joining us today from all over the place across California, a variety of roles. We've got folks working at different levels across our system of care. We have people working in training, direct practice and service, child welfare, behavioral health, probation, It's always super exciting when we have such a diverse group of participants in the room. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a county perspective about what it's like to work with a technical assistance or TA provider. So you can get some of that county voice. We've heard that from you in our previous webinars that you'd like to hear more from the folks who are doing the direct service work. We're going to do a brief overview and recap of All County Letter 2554 and the Fidelity Plan requirements. We're going to do a review of what we talked about in our last webinar, which is the County Practice and Improvement Plan, one of the new Fidelity requirements that you will hear us refer to as the CPIP. We're going to talk about development of your county plan and use of these really amazing technical assistance activity guides that are really designed to help people to come up with strategies to address needs that emerge through your CPIP. We will have time for some question and answers, and we will go through our typical closing feedback questions and letting you know about upcoming webinars and other opportunities. All right, so I'm going to invite you to join us on Mentimeter. There should be a link shared in the chat shortly. If it hasn't been popped in there already, awesome, Sahar, thank you. You can also scan that QR code using a smartphone, or you can go to menti.com, enter the code 29635044. And it looks like I'm seeing some thumbs ups from people letting us know that they have found their way onto Mentimeter. Thank you so much for doing so. Again, you can scan that QR code using a smartphone or access the link in the chat. All right, so we've got a question for you all. Have you or your county or agency received outside support for CFTs, child and family teaming, or the CANs for your county or agency? Questions, answers being yes, no, or no, but I would like that. So outside support often looks like working with a consultant, working with a technical assistance provider, working with a training academy who perhaps is providing some direct support or customized training. So let us know if you have received outside support for child and family teaming or the CANs. And it looks like quite a few folks have, 42 respondents, so that's awesome. We would love to hear from you in the chat as we move through the rest of our content about things that worked really well about that or opportunities for upgrade in the process. We also have about 21 people responding no, that you haven't, and 18 who are saying, no, but I would like that. So if you're in that no, but I would like that spot, we are excited to let you know that help is available at no cost to counties and their partners. So we're going to hear more today about what that looks like and how you can access that support. All right, so we're going to move next into hearing from Allison Hendrix from Tulare County, who's going to have a conversation with Shelley Paul. Allison received technical assistance support at the request of her county with implementation and use of the CANs. And Shelley Paul was her technical assistance provider. So as you'll see, these two have a strong connection and working relationship, and you'll get to hear directly from someone who asked for support, received support, and found it to be beneficial. So I'll hand the mic over to you both.
Awesome. Thank you. We're super excited to be here to kind of have this conversation. I wanted to give a little bit of a history around Tulare County so you kind of understand who we are. So we have about 450,000 people in Tulare County and about 80,000 children under the age of 19. And we're not super huge in the child welfare, but we're not super small either. Just to kind of give you an idea of how big we are, we have about 952 children in foster care. That's kind of where we've been averaging in the last few years, and then we have about 350 kids on family maintenance. So I don't know what that math is off the top of my head. Maybe close to 1,200 kids
Yeah.
that we are currently working with at any given time. So that's a little bit about Tulare County to kind of see where we fall in the spectrum of super large to tiny.
Awesome.
Go ahead. Shelley.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, thanks for sharing that. And do you mind sharing a little bit about what prompted you to ask for technical assistance support?
So I believe it was in some sort of committee collaboration. I want to say it was the Central Valley collaboration on cans and CFTs that it was presented that Shelley was providing assistance to one of my peer counties, and I was super jealous. We currently have both cans and CFTs in our system improvement plan, and it's something we've been struggling to fully implement. So during that meeting, I was begging the facilitator to somehow put me on the list, put us on the list to get TA assistance for increasing our numbers of timely cans and CFTs. So we started, I believe, about a year ago with just preliminary conversations between Shelley, myself, and David from CCTA about what this looked like, what the plan would be, how we would obtain information, where we are in implementation, what our numbers are. So we had quite a few preliminary conversations, either virtually or via email. And then about fall of 2024, Shelley and David were able to do, I called them listening sessions, kind of like mapping with our staff. So at least for our county, our social workers are very vocal about what's working well, what's not working well, and ways to improve it. So Shelley and David were lucky enough to hear from the entire spectrum of staff. So from emergency response all the way to the end to PP adoptions and non-relative, no, not non-relative, AB12 staff to hear what's working well with cans, what's a struggle with CFTs, what's going right, what are your ideas. Staff have some of the greatest ideas. We were at a stalemate as like, what's wrong? Like, why can't we increase our numbers? It just seems so stagnant. Staff had really great ideas on different ways to communicate things, different ideas that I never would have come up with. So as a result of that, we did some tweaks to our policies, added a few policy, and we did some learning labs, which really kind of helped staff to embed cans into their processes and workflows, and then also have those conversations with the family and then in the CFT. And then she's also done some work with just our CFT facilitators to embrace bringing the cans into our CFTs.
Yeah, thanks so much. And Allison, you've been such an amazing partner. It's like we can just like email and touch base and, you know, joke a little bit about the pain of the process.
Very true.
You always hear me say that cans, like getting that effective implementation usually takes 4 to 6 months of social workers not enjoying the process until they get comfort. And then they're like, oh, this is so easy. Why didn't you tell me?
Very true. Very true.
I was thinking about when you were sharing about the process, when we were doing the 3 questions, the mapping with the social workers to really get their input, we were kind of presenting to them information about the why around the cans, the CFT, but then also the tiered rate structure so they could understand why the fidelity was so important. and we were talking about some of the pros and cons of different options. And I think what we found was really resounding support for social workers being the CANS completer, but feeling like they needed more support, which is why we designed those learning labs. And I do think getting certified on the CANS is important, but it doesn't teach you the practical pieces of actually doing it with families.
Correct. We saw that as well. I will say before our TA work with Shelly, we were for ongoing CANs, we were in the 40th percentile for getting them completed, and now we're in the low 60s. And then for ongoing CFTs, we were in the 47th percentile, and now we're closing in on 80th percentile. So we've really seen an increase in both of those areas. I will say we continue to struggle with our initial being timely, but that's more of a logistics versus a belief system. I believe our staff want to do them, but logistically speaking, it's difficult to get them completed in time.
Yeah, I met with the facilitation team last week, I think, and we were talking about these strategies of actually blocking out slots for the court workers so that they could have those set times and really bring those out. So, I think you're making a great point. Technical assistance didn't get you to 100%, but it's that ongoing conversations and continuing to problem solve. And as we continue to build our relationship with staff, I think we see even more outreach and interest. Oh.
I have to apologize. We have construction going on down below, where I am sitting, and obviously they picked right this second to start drilling on metal.
We cannot hear it, unbelievably, because I can only imagine how loud it is for you.
Oh, it's super loud. It's been a fun adventure.
One of the things that I wanted to just ask you about is, I know when we met to prepare, you were talking about kind of your role in what you do whenever there is new guidance issued by the state. And I thought it was such a helpful description of, kind of the role of a policy analyst and the work that you do. So if you don't mind just walking us through that. And we actually can't hear the construction, so you sound good.
Okay. Well, they paused right now, so wow, I wish I remember what I said. I will say one thing that I picked up from actually you, Emma, was the 3 colored highlighters. And so when I read this ACL, like the 3rd time, I used that. And that's what when I gave my feedback to executive, that's how I wrote it. I was like, these are my, this is what you need to know. This is our procs. These are things that need to change. And these are like policy change and then practice change. That was super helpful. I think one thing that is helpful is having a direct line of communication with somebody that can make big decisions. As a policy and program specialist, I can't make big decisions, but you need to have the ear and the ability to get an answer quickly from somebody in executive that can do things.
And I was going to mention, I think one of the great things about our partnership, Allison, was that you have connections with so many of your colleagues. And so through those relationships, I could kind of build some trust by association. So you would do that warm welcome. You frequently came to many of the listening sessions and to encourage, and also to some of the learning labs. And I think that you having that network of relationships, and in other counties as well, when your point person as a technical assistance support person has those connections, it's so helpful to the process. So
Yeah.
for that.
I do think during the learning sessions, I would kind of come in, welcome everybody, and then leave and let Shelly do what she needed to do. And I think that was super helpful because then they were more willing to speak. I think sometimes depending on who will lead that conversation, staff won't say all the things that they need to say to make us a better agency.
Yeah, it's a great point. And then after the listening sessions, David and I put together a summary for you of kind of like the key themes, what was working well, what the worries were, and then their recommendations. And Tulare was actually able to follow some of the recommendations. So then when we go back to the staff and say, hey, based on your input, this was the management agrees, they like your recommendations, that can really help the transfer of buy-in.
Yes. I keep that document on my wall and refer to it whenever we're talking about like cans and CFTs and be like, what did staff want? What did staff see? Where were our pain points? So since that time, we've updated our CFT policy and we did a lot of changing things and communication on CFTs based on what staff said. Staff were very aware that one supervisor read the policy this way and another supervisor read it this way. So we had staff not doing CFTs because their supervisor was wrongly informed. So we were able to resolve that issue, and now we see them going up and up on numbers of CFTs.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it was a combination too of your data review, because then we could, reach out to that specific team and be like, hey, do you need support? And kind of troubleshoot in addition to the staff letting us know.
Yes, that was also super helpful.
I did just want to jump in because we had a question that came in through the Q&A for you, Allison. Since CANS is on your SIP, your system improvement plan, how are you integrating the CPIP, County Practice and Improvement Plan, into your SIP process?
Well, technically it's not on our SIP. What is on our SIP is SDM, but when we got into the committee, we said assessments. We opened that door to assessments. So it technically wasn't on the SIP initially, it was added a little bit later. Um, Can you repeat the question again?
Sure, yeah. I think there was an assumption that CANS is on your SIP, and then the question was, how are you integrating the CPIP into your SIP process?
So at this point, we haven't integrated the two together. It will be mentioned in the SIP and the CSA because we're at the end of our cycle. So next year we'll start our peer review. So it will be mentioned in there as something big that the agency is doing and complying with and how that will impact us. But because of timing, it's not integrated because our SIP draft is due like tomorrow. So it didn't quite make the cut for this cycle. But it will be somehow integrated in future future updates.
Yeah, and I'm guessing what may happen is as Tulare goes through the CPIP and sees those action items, there may be SIP action items that match. So it may actually match the other way, where the SIP links to the CPIP.
Yeah, I think that's how it's going to work because I think a few of them are, policy, training, communication, and that's in our system improvement plan. And those are also in the CPIP. So I think the SIP is supporting the CPIP
That
versus
makes
the other way.
Uh-huh.
Thank you so much. And then just trying to keep an eye on time, I want to invite other participants who might have questions for Allison to uplift those either through the chat or the Q&A feature. And I would just love to know, Allison, from your perspective, if you were talking with someone else who works at county child welfare, probation, behavioral health, a contracted agency, and they're having some challenges with child and family teaming or the integrated practice CANS, would you recommend technical assistance or working with a TA, and why? And what makes someone ready or not for technical assistance?
I think you're always ready for technical assistance. I think as a social worker, you always need that another viewpoint. In my little brain, I like other people's ideas, and I like the bigger the committee, the better the output. So I always over invite people and say, I want you to be here because I think you have great ideas, and you bring a different perspective than what my little cubicle allows me to have. So I'm always open for more input. So I always think counties are ready for TA assistance and kind of outside steering kind of vision. Yeah.
Do you, I guess one worry that some counties might have is that the technical assistance provider is going to come in with a vision or a plan and voice that upon the county. Could you chat about that piece a little bit?
That is a possibility. But I think it's up to the county to have that kind of not control, but ability to tweak things with their TA provider. It's a difficult position to have somebody from the outside come in, but I think it's a committee decision, just like with CFTs. The agency has the ultimate decision, but we take in everybody's opinion and kind of make sure everybody has the same consensus.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, just thinking about David and my process, we like made a list of recommendations, and this is what we do with all the counties we work with. And then the counties prioritize those recommendations and can cross them off, right? Like, it's your county, we understand, we don't understand all the nuances. So based on that feedback, we're making some recommendations, but ultimately the county gets to decide, to your point.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Allison, what you said reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. I think it's an African proverb, but it's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think you are an excellent example of a convener and someone who's really skilled at getting people together and in the rooms to have the right conversations so we can go far together. Because we all know that this work is complex. We have families who we work with a lot of needs, who are often struggling with social isolation and poverty and all of the things. And so we need to be really strong in our connectedness in order to serve them well. And part of what we're going to dig into next is really reminding folks that the county practice and improvement plan isn't just a document, it's a process. And it's a process that's designed to bring people together to have important conversations to really get a sense of what's happening in our systems. So I'm just going to check the chat real quick. It doesn't look like there's any other specific questions for Allison. We're going to cover more about what it looks like to request TA, who can request TA, how we initiate that process. But I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much, Allison. You are incredible. We appreciate you coming and joining and sharing your experience. And thank you, Shelley, for being a great support to Allison and so many other counties. You both are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And shout out to Shelley. Like it was a easy process from day one, easy, and we learned so much.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to remove my spotlights and then work on pulling back up my screen share. So give me just a moment here. Thanks for your patience. All right. I think at this point, I'm handing it over to Robin.
Yes, you are. Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Shelley and Allison. That was wonderful to hear, and I love just hearing about the partnership you two have developed. It's obvious that there's a great rapport there and everything as well, and it's exciting to see how it's all coming together and moving forward. But I'm here to talk a bit more about the IP CANS and CFT All-County Letter, or Fidelity All-County Letter 2554. It was released in August 2025, so just a couple months ago here. And just want to provide a little bit of information on what's included in the letter. Just briefly, again, it has the background. You've heard me say this a number of times if you've been to prior webinars, but just a quick recap. It provides background on like the CFTs, IPCANs, and the tiered rate structure. It also emphasizes the importance of culture being integrated throughout the practices. Additionally, it has highlights of collaboration with partners and tribal representatives. The engagement is embedded in the CQI and Fidelity work group and through the 11 listening and discussion sessions that were held in the end of 2024 and early 2025. And the All County letter goes into more detail about some of those engagement efforts. It also highlights a key update for our juvenile probation partners that they'll begin using the IPCAN statewide with youth and foster care on January 1st, 2026. We also have more information on our Fidelity and CQI efforts, including the different requirements associated with the Fidelity efforts. It also includes information on different data reports, training, coaching, technical assistance, and the different levels of support. Also has information on guidance on how to request TA. So just highlighting that. I know we're talking a bit about that today. You can find more information in the All County letter as well. And then it also has updated training requirements that are updated based on roles. It covers both IPCAN's completion and CFT meeting facilitation, and also provides direction on how to obtain those different trainings. Go to the next slide. What you're seeing here is how the different Fidelity elements really fit together and provide a thorough picture of the IPCANs and CFT practices. The CFT brochure is provided to the youth and family and the team members prior to their initial CFT meeting to assist with that engagement and their understanding in the processes. And then starting January 1st, 2026, the CFT action plan is then used during each CFT meeting and is also provided to the court. So the action plan captures CFT meeting and IPCAN's information, records action steps, and ensures that the youth and family perspectives are accurately represented and linked to services. And then from there, during select CFT meetings, so not all CFT meetings, and this is beginning after April 1st, 2026, the CFT meeting observation tool will begin to be completed. This tool captures the family's experience and the meeting's effectiveness overall from an impartial observer. Then following the meeting, the CFT meeting survey is completed in order to receive feedback from all of those folks involved in the meeting. And then in addition to the meeting process, we also have the County Practice and Improvement Plan, or the CPIP, which is one of the things we're highlighting today. And that's completed by each placing agency, and the IPCAN's Fidelity Review tool, which is still under finalization. And that tool is going to be intended to be completed by the California Department of Social Services. So more information and direction to come on that tool. And here's a bit of the timeline. I know I messaged some of the timing in that last slide, but as you can see, things are kind of moving along quickly here. We're already past our September date where CFT brochures and the CFT meeting survey requirement began. And we also have our technical assistance guides that are coming now anticipated this month. We were hoping for last month, but we're thinking this month in order to get them out to everyone. And we also have additional support available that launched last month. And then in January 2026 is when that CPIP is due, the County Practice and Improvement Plan. And again, I'll be talking more about that. And you can see we've built in this phased in approach to kind of allow time to build up and plan within agencies while still moving at a quick enough pace to hopefully reach and maintain fidelity before the tiered rate structure goes live in 2027. I think we can move forward to talk about the rest here. So again, we're diving into the County Practice and Improvement Plan. I just want to highlight that this is the second of 2 webinars and their accompanying their learning labs that's exploring the County Practice and Improvement Plan. The first was recorded and is available online, so you can still catch that information as well. But the CPIP in general it's a collaborative self-assessment to assess IP cans and CFT system infrastructure, implementation, practice, and policy information. It's kind of like a gaps analysis for the placing agency. It's designed to be completed by each placing agency, both county child welfare and juvenile probation, in collaboration with their contracted providers and children's behavioral health teams who are involved in both the IP cans and CFT processes. Both the placing agencies must also engage with their ILTs, or their interagency leadership teams, and their tribal agencies to complete the tool. When completed collaboratively, the tool really does provide that comprehensive information, and it has a more accurate understanding of what is working well and can inform areas that are needing improvement. It also adds the additional layer of accountability and support in there as well when completed collaboratively. Additionally, to further support the fidelity to these practices, a section of this tool includes completion of an improvement plan that's informed and guided by the discussions and results from the CPIP. And we'll be talking and diving more into that and looking at it. Again, this tool is required beginning January 1st, 2026, and then updated annually hereafter. Next slide. Okay, this is a bit of the why. It's kind of in collaboration with the UC Davis Northern Academy, we hosted 11 different virtual listening sessions in late 2024 and early 2025. We gathered input from counties, practitioners, and people with lived experience to understand what's working well, what isn't, and what's needed. In the implementation specifically of both IP cans and CFTs. An analysis of these sessions was completed by the Center for Innovation and Population Health. And we have that listening session analysis available for review on our Fidelity website, and could get that posted too. But these are a few of the themes that we identified during these listening sessions and how the CPIP is responsive to some of those themes. We also gained insight through our CQI and Fidelity work group, and CFT and CAN statewide forums. Some of the things that came up was clarity and consistency. Many participants reported that there was enthusiasm for the IP cans and the CFT processes, but they encountered different interpretations of how these processes were working and what they looked like. So that feeds into the CPIP structure, which kind of insists a bit on consistent self-assessment across the counties and alignment with the Fidelity framework so that everyone's kind of using the same map, if you will. Additionally, the inclusion of the family and youth voice was highlighted. That the input emphasized that families sometimes feel that they're not adequately informed or their voice isn't meaningfully part of decision making or the discussion. So to respond, the CPIP includes questions and ratings about how practice includes that family and that youth, and how the feedback and surveys and other qualitative inputs are also incorporated. We also have heard a lot about the cultural responsiveness and equity. There were concerns raised about how the practices work for different populations, including tribal partners. The CPIP system of care area focuses on these partnerships and leadership, ensuring equity in both the IP cans and CFT processes. And then there's a gaps analysis in CQI. So issues with data access, communication, resource constraints, those types of things were common. The CPIP doesn't just ask the counties to identify these problems, but it also asks them to plan improvements and strategies to kind of help resolve some of them, and helps connect them to state and Cal Academy technical assistance and resources and support. Then the fidelity and implementation supports, the listening sessions also made it clear that having tools alone is not enough. That we need training, we need coaching, we need concrete support. And so the CPIP is then tied to this guidance, right? We have technical assistance and fidelity tools that are also can help the counties not just plan, but implement with fidelity. So as you can see, overall, the CPIP responds to the feedback that we heard, and it builds in that structured reflection, the family voice, equity, shared leadership, guided support of things that we've kind of talked about here. We'll move forward.
All right, we have another quick Mentimeter question. So I'm going to share the link in the chat again. You can also join at menti.com, code 29635044. And you may also have this page already up on your smart device if you joined using the code last time. So the question is, have you developed a plan for completing your county, your placing agency's CPIP? You probably heard us last time talk about this being a process, and it's one that we're finding is taking multiple sessions to complete. So if you have not developed a plan, it's a good idea to start thinking about one because your CPIP is due January 1st. Kudos to the folks who are responding yes. I think we should give them some high fives, claps, and heart emojis in the chat. That is fantastic. You do need a plan. And it looks like we've got quite a few folks who are unsure. It's very normal for you to be unsure depending on where you're situated within your system of care. You may or may not know if there is a plan or who is working on completing the CPIP. So that's a great opportunity and invitation to ask, especially if you work as a contracted provider or community-based organization that's situated within a county or counties. Ask your county partners, are you working on your CPIP? Do you have a plan to complete your CPIP? Can we be a part of that process? Again, we cannot take folks off mute, so we see the raised hands, but if you have a question, please use the chat or the Q&A feature, and then we'll move along here.
All right, thank you. As I discussed, the timeline is still the January 1st of 2026, and then annually after that for the CPIP. Both placing agencies are required to submit the CPIP online, but this can be submitted separately or jointly depending on how the CPIP was completed and where each placing agency is at with their IPCANS and CFT implementation and practice. We'll talk a bit more about this as well, but it's broken up into different, the CPIP is broken up into different sections. And these sections are, some can be, it would be more likely that like the system of care section would be completed together, whereas sections discussing practice may be, or may be completed separately due to different stages of implementation. So it's quite likely that most agencies will be submitting separate CPIPs, but in the future, it's possible that we may be able to align them and get them filed jointly as well. So if you're unsure on if you should submit separately or jointly, you can submit a TA request, and we're happy to walk you through that process as well. Additionally, with the CPIP team completion, who's on the CPIP team, the CPIP team membership may include a number of different people, as you can see here. Most of the people listed here are included on those interagency leadership teams, such as behavioral health, child welfare, juvenile probation, education, regional center partners. A lot of these people are already included on the ILTs, but we also want to make sure that we include our partners that are included in the actual practice of the implementation of CFTs and IPCANs, like our contracted providers. Also those with lived experience, making sure our tribal partners are at the table as well, as they're included in some ILTs, but we've heard not all. So it's great to make sure that you have the right people at the table, and what that looks like for each county may be a little bit different. Some counties have more established ILTs, some are still kind of ramping them up again. So it's one of those things of kind of looking at where you're at internally. And again, if you submit a TA request, we can help you kind of with that planning and reach out as well. But it's important to kind of look internally for team membership as well. And we've also heard some counties are having what's called a completion team, which I thought was a great idea. So they have their core people kind of doing a completion of the CPIP and then bringing additional people into the meetings that are more applicable to them, because as we've discussed, the process of completing the CPIP does take more than one meeting. And that's difficult, as we know, to kind of schedule and things like that. So having kind of a completion team and bringing in those additional folks as needed is also a helpful stance that we've heard from counties as far as scheduling goes. And here, I believe I kick it over to April.
Thanks, Robin. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be here with all of you again. I hope you had some time to look over the County Practice and Improvement Plan document. It is part of the ACL, and we can also put a link to the document itself so that you can just look at that and not get overwhelmed by the ACL. There are 4 areas, as it notes on the slide, of the CPIP, and I'm going to go over them fairly quickly. 3 of the topic areas are those areas that will help the county's team reflect on and understand where they're at with their current IP cans and CFT implementation and practice. So the system of care area, which is the gold section in this circle, helps us really understand the county's leadership process and their structure in relation to the IP cans and CFT, right? And how the IP cans and CFT are being utilized across the county. The practice area has those 3 subsections that are noted in the box in green, and it helps us understand if there's practice with fidelity in CFTs and IP cans, and whether the integrated core practice model is being applied within both of these approaches. The 3rd area looks at how CFT and IP cans data or information is being monitored and reviewed and used for decision making at the county level. Also in here is whether or not the data that has been aggregated, reviewed, analyzed is being communicated back to staff and stakeholders to let them know how the IP cans and CFT practice is going across the county. And finally, the 4th section is the improvement plan, which is going to articulate those strategies and steps to building the county's strengths through effective CFT and IP cans practice and practiced with fidelity. This is the main focus of our webinar today, and Shelley is going to talk about this more in a few slides from now. If I could get the next slide. In the last webinar, we introduced the CPIP completion guide, which I think was put into the chat, the link. And that guide provides an outline of how one could facilitate a process within a team on the completion of the tool. So outlined in that guide is a 3-session suggested meeting structure, which is summarized on this slide. And while we noted 3 specific session topics, right? The CPIP introduction and administration overview, the CPIP administration proper, that's where you're actually going to complete the tool, excuse me, and the CPIP process review and planning session. It actually might take your county more than 3 sessions to complete the tool. So think about it this way. Each session could have multiple meetings in order to complete that particular session. So some things to consider when you're planning, how long is this going to take us, right? How big is your county? How big is your completion team, as Robin pointed out just a second ago? And how much time do you all think you will need to be able to gather the information you need to answer the questions or respond to the statements on the tool itself? The other thing to consider is whether or not both county placing agencies, child welfare and juvenile probation, are submitting a joint or separate CPIP. And as Robin mentioned, we do recommend that you do the system of care section together as a full team. We also recommend, however, that you stick around as a full team to complete the other sections as well, because this is a gap analysis of sort. This is a way to understand what's happening across the county and how the different partners are addressing some of the challenges that they have around the implementation of the CANs and the CFT. So sticking around can be really helpful to hear the lessons learned, but also to support each other in making sure that our processes are aligned and that you're using the resources in the most effective and efficient way across the county. All right, if we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. Not unlike the CANs, right? The CPIP's a communometric tool, and you can see on the, whoops.
Goodness, so sorry.
That's okay.
Back up. I don't know what happened there.
I don't mind seeing Robin's face. All right. So not unlike the CANs, the CPIP's a communometric tool, and you can see on the left-hand side of the slide the rating scale. So what this means is that we're trying to determine how we're going to support the county's implementation of the CFT and IP CANs through the rating scale. And I'm going to talk about this in the next slide. Let's see. So the other thing to think about in this communometric tool and process, as we have been trying to highlight in our session today, is the CPIP needs to have some time to talk about consensus building. So this process of completion really needs to create some space around how we're going to seek agreement and get the team on the same page as we try to understand what's happening with CFT and IP CANs across the county. So in that very first session, there is specific time spent on discussing the process of how we do build consensus and why it's important in completing the CPIP. There's also time that should be spent in that first completion session in obtaining verbal consent from the team members for their participation in the process and to make sure they understand the purpose and the value of the conversation and feel comfortable. We want to create a space where there's psychological safety so people can share some things that might feel a little vulnerable about how their particular implementation or their practice is going around these two approaches. Next slide, Emma. All right, so why use a strengths rating scale, you're wondering, right? So what this means is that each of the statements on the CPIP could be a placing agency's strength that's useful to them and accessible to them in their IP CANs and CFT practice. So when we're using the rating scale, we really want to understand if the statement is identifying something that's currently a strength. If it's not, then we're probably going to rate it actionable, either a 2 or a 3, the orange or the red, right? So let me use a really easy example from the CPIP itself. So 2.3.J says, the IP CANs completers have an active certification, which must be maintained. A process is in place to monitor ongoing compliance. So your team is going to rate this. If the IP CANs completers in the county are not actively certified, and there's no process in place to monitor their certification status, then that statement should be rated a 3 for not in place, excuse me, and no evidence of a strength. If, however, IP CANs completers are by and large actively certified and there is a process in place to monitor certification, and that process is being used by both placing agencies to remind CANs completers to recertify, then we're going to rate it a 0 for in place and fully accessed. Just to give you a quick example. So the flow chart on the bottom half of the slide can be really helpful to walk the team through determining the ratings on a particular statement. And I will turn this over to Robin.
Hi again. So again, we've talked a lot about a bit about it, and we'll talk even more about like the TA or the technical assistance that's available, right? So there is help. I know there's a lot of overwhelming feelings probably happening. The CPIP is a big lift, but it's something that is supported. We envision a facilitator, which could be a technical assistance provider, who kind of works with the team in order to help with the completion of the CPIP. And their kind of role, they can help the county prepare and follow up with everyone, assisting in identifying that team membership, as I discussed before, even help with scheduling the meetings themselves, meeting times, locations, what materials should be brought to the meetings. They can help with documenting agreements, the next steps, timelines. Most importantly, they encourage that safe consensus-based participation. They make sure that the voices are elevated for everyone in the room. They can also help connect the CPIP to those other improvement efforts, such as the SIP or the county self-assessment, or as you heard today, even connecting the SIP back to the CPIP, depending on when it's due for your county and things like that. And additionally, as we've said, the placing agencies can submit a request for CPIP completion assistance via the online Fidelity Technical Assistance Request form. I know it's been put in the chat previously. I'm sure we'll put it in there again and again, and also ensure you have it at the end of the meeting. But we do welcome people to, especially placing agencies, to submit requests for the CPIP completion assistance if they want to talk it over with us and just kind of get a better sense of how to start, or want a technical assistance provider to be assigned to really help walk them and their team through it. So we welcome that and encourage it. Also available, next slide. We have some trainings available. We have our County Practice and Improvement Plan Facilitator training. So this is a 4-hour training that's built to help those TA providers and the CPIP facilitators, whether they're internal or external. They could be from a Cal Academy. They could be an internal county designated lead. They could be someone from CDSS like myself, but someone who feels comfortable with the CPIP and completion process. But it's an interactive training. It's strongly recommended for those folks. Participants will build confidence in using the CPIP completion guide, gain clarity on the CPIP requirements, and kind of their role in system improvement planning. They'll also practice engagement strategies and working with the county interagency leadership team, including navigating some of the reluctance or challenging questions that may arise. So drawing on the expertise of the seasoned TA providers, the session also connects the CPIP work to the other CFT and IPCAN's practice and policy and fidelity efforts that are happening. And we do have the registration link available in the chat already. Thank you for that. We have it scheduled for October 17th. We did have our first one at the end of September. That went really well. We got some great feedback on it, making some updates for the October 17th. And we are likely going to schedule a third as well. The next slide, we also have our learning community for CPIP facilitators and TA providers. So if you are one of those providers or the people within a county that may be facilitating that CPIP conversation or the CPIP lead, this is a more kind of hands-on engaging moment meeting that is more you could come in with your questions and have those conversations. We can discuss what is being seen and what barriers are being held and what strengths we're seeing as well. So we can kind of move together and provide that support as we're progressing throughout the CPIP completion.
All right. We have arrived at our break time. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. We will break from now until 10:05 to give you a moment to move your bodies and rest your beautiful brains for a moment. So please come back at 10:05. All right, folks, it is 10:05, so we're gonna get back in here. I just wanted to share a couple of things verbally. I know that we are peppering you with links in the chat. If you click the link that is the materials for today, there's a standalone 2-page document that includes just a whole bunch of links. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by how many links are shared in the chat, find that document, download that document, and you should have them available to you all. We are also exploring emailing that out as an attachment because we know that there can be challenges with some folks for accessing Box. And then before we hand it over to Shelley, I just wanted to give Robin an opportunity to respond to a really thoughtful question that Martin shared in the chat about just the reality of completing the CPIP in the process as designed and the time frame allowed for that. So Robin, if you can chime in there, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your question, Martin. And as we expressed, we know that there's a lot of overwhelming feelings and stuff, and the January 1st due date is approaching quicker than we would all like, right? So it's understandable. So the question is really what happens if it's not submitted by January 1st, right? So essentially, what would happen is you may receive an email from us, a week or 2 weeks later asking if it's in process, if any support is needed in its completion, and that kind of stuff. We really are trying to approach this as partners, and we would really like to help counties and placing agencies get their CPIP completed, if not by the due date, shortly after. So I wouldn't say there's flexibility, but there's additional support and reach out that we will do if it's not submitted by the January 1st deadline, in hopes to get it there. We also will be tracking who is receiving support already through a technical assistance provider. So that way we can kind of have that noted as well, because we do understand with scheduling and things like that. Sometimes I believe there are some who have scheduled out quite a few meetings and they have some in early January already. So we already anticipate that CPIP would be submitted late, right? But we also know that there is active work being made on it. So I think it's also a difference of, is it being worked on or is it not even been a thought yet, kind of thing. But generally speaking, the placing agencies would likely start receiving emails and reach out from CDSS asking what we can do to help move it along.
Thanks so much, Robin. I'm going to advance to the next slide and pass it over to Shelley.
Great, thank you so much. And I did want to share real quickly as we're moving on to this next planning section, what the CPIP technical assistance facilitator might look like. So actually, many people in this room, Emma and I are doing, there's all these different partners. And for the most part, we're co-facilitating so that we really can honor the county's schedule. So we're not basing it around our schedule. And then we're allowed, creates more flexibility for us to be able to do that on a set date and time for the county. And please know that what happens is we come in, I've now done this with, 5 or 6 counties, and we do like a grounding meeting with behavioral health, probation, child welfare, and just set the stage, right? What's it going to look like when we actually do this completion team meeting? Who should be there? How are we going to schedule? And then we walk through all those steps so that people can kind of and what I see is by the end of the meeting, people feel much better because they have a better understanding of what it will look like. And then we schedule it and we start. You hear us talking about these 3 sessions. So you see this 1, 2, and 3 here, and this is how we name them for the completion guide. But I just want to be clear, there's more meetings than sessions, right? So the completion team I don't think a completion team will meet 3 times and be done. So these sessions are really how we broke this out. That first session is the overview. We've done this already with a couple counties, and it was very effective. In a 90-minute time, we were able to get it done. Lots of grounding, lots of understanding the why, putting our heart into this team, helping all our partners understand why they're there in their role. And then the step 2 is actually completing the ratings together collaboratively. And I don't remember, as Emma or Robin mentioned, you might bring people in for certain sessions or certain meetings where they have expertise in the practice area or the data area or in the system of care area. So just know you can have your core group and then even gather input from other people or have other people join. And that'll bring us to the, I was just going to say that I think this middle session, the rating, is going to take 3 to 5 90-minute sessions, just so you know. It's 120 items. It'll depend on how robust those conversations are. And then we'll get to this third session, which will in actuality be like meeting 5 or 6 or 7. If you're doing 1-hour meetings, it'll vary a little bit, but this will be the planning meeting, right? And this is where we're really moving from that assessment piece where we had those collaborative conversations about rating. We were thinking about strategies after each section, just kind of making notes. And then we're going to come back and really do that gap analysis to implement the planning piece, right? We're going to be moving from what's needed, assessing what's needed, to really how we'll do it. Next slide, please. So in session 3, and as I mentioned, meeting 5, 6, 7, wherever you are in that meeting schedule, we're really going to be focusing as a team on what the key priorities are. I want to point out here, it may be that counties have 50 or 60% of their items that are a 2 or a 3, right? So there may be 50 or 60% of the CPIP items may need support or need, a plan around them to get them to be a strength for that county. Don't think that we expect you to, just like a CANS, we don't expect people to transition all to 0s and 1s within the next time period. We know that you need to focus your priorities. We're going to be doing that together as a team. What makes the most sense for us to focus on? And then we're going to create 2 or 3 key strategies and be very clear about who's going to do what the timeframes are, and what the resources are for those action. So similar again to a CFT action plan, we're going to be really clear about who's going to do what, when they're going to do it, and what they need to complete that task. So really, when we do this in this CPIP completion team, as I'm calling it, that's how we're really going to make sure that our plan is supporting the system of care, which ultimately all of us have the same goal, to make sure that the children and youth we serve and the families are having the best possible outcomes. And we'll also be integrating our data, thinking about the fidelity to the CANs and the CFTs, and quality improvement efforts into the planning. How will we monitor our plan, and how will we ensure we're making progress when we complete the next CPIP assessment? Okay, and I'm going to head it. April, is this one you? Or is this one me?
It's you.
Thanks. I have my numbers here and I think I got them a little wrong. So some of those key activities we talked about, really creating that priority, looking back through those ratings. Again, this may have taken 3 or 4 or 5 meetings, depending on how long your meetings are, and reviewing the CPIP together, thinking about what the areas of priority are and where we can make the biggest movement over this next year to focus on. Part of this assessment and planning and prioritizing, we may notice that we need some technical assistance, support, training, and resources. Please know that you can reach out to your Cal Academy and they'll be able to provide you support around those items. So that might become part of your plan. And then ultimately, the group will finalize the CPIP strategies and create those next steps.
This one's me.
Great.
All right. In just a minute, I'm going to show you the CPIP completion guide. But what we want to point out here are these 2 appendices. And these are really practical supports, right, that make the completion of the CPIP much easier. And so we recommend that you use them as kind of quick reference guides so that if you're facilitating the completion process, you don't have to start from scratch. Um, and I'll show you in just a second that each appendix connects clearly back to the CPIP. So you can use these to help you as you're completing the tool or in between the meeting time so that you can review and prepare for the meeting session. So if I could share my screen, Emma, that would be super awesome. And let's see, make sure I can do this right. All right. So this is the completion guide. And oops, there we go. And you can see in the table of contents, there are two appendices here. And I'm going to go to the first one. And this one is called the questions to consider and data sources. So let me go to a page that's a little cleaner here. So you can see here in the blue box, there are questions to consider. And for a facilitator, Shelley, feel free to jump in. For a facilitator of the process, you can use these questions to kind of prompt the team in helping them understand what is being asked of them in the CPIP. So down below here, you see it's section 1.4 and 1.4a, b, c, and d. And this is about, do you have the documents in place so that you can share information around CFT and CANS? And you can see here we put data sources that might be where you look to see if these are in fact in place, if you're not sure.
Yeah,
Okay, so we really want to recommend that you use the questions to consider if you're familiar with the CANS. It also has questions to consider. You would use them in very similar ways.
thank you. I was just going to add, in the counties that we're now entering into, our next meeting will be actually rating the CPIP. Our two placing agencies are going back and they've chosen to pencil score the first section, so the system of care section in preparation. And this is so valuable. So they're going to use these questions to consider and the data sources as part of their assessment.
All right. Okay, if we can go back, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the slide, Emma. Okay, this slide gives you another look at the potential data sources to use for the completion of the CPIP. And again, this is really a reference, a quick reference so that you can see all the data sources listed on the left and where they could be used within the CPIP itself. And as you just saw in the completion guide, we give you much more detailed information about what about the data source could be helpful for each and every topic statement in the CPIP. And I didn't quite show it, but in the practice section, you can see it starts to use the survey data from all the different fidelity tools. The actual question numbers for those fidelity tools are linked to each of the different topic statements to make it as easy as possible. If you have access to the data from the fidelity tools, that is. Next slide is back to Shelley.
All right, thank you so much. So we wanted to kind of provide some support to you by walking you kind of through how this might look in your CPIP completion team. Emma, if it's okay, I'm going to share the handout or share the screen to share the handout for today and walk us through that. So we created this handout to kind of help you think about what this will actually look like, right? I love that transition from, information to the practical piece. So we're trying to give you some practical. So we're going to take a look at 2.4. This is the practice section, right? So it's We're now rating the CPIP. We've moved past the system of care into practice. And we're looking specifically at 2.4, which is ICPM informed, integrated core practice model. So are we following the integrated core practice model values and beliefs that we're all committed to providing? Are those values and beliefs infused into the way we're doing our IP cans and CFT? So you're my completion team. Welcome everybody to our California County. And this is where we're at. So we're going to think together. 2.4a, the IP cans is incorporated into the CFT meeting as outlined by our state issued guidance expectance. And that's a hyperlink, right? So we're going to think about these questions to consider. How are we using the IP cans during the CFT meetings? In what ways are those identified needs and strengths from the IP cans influencing the team's planning and decision making? Are we making sure that the IP cans is a living document that evolves with a child and family's progress and voice? Is it consensus based, right? Are we following all of those requirements? And are all of the participants aware how the IP cans connects to the overall teaming process? Or when the social worker brings it up, is that when we're doing the explanation of what the IP cans is? Or does it happen in a pre-meeting, right? So really thinking, when we're thinking about our integrated core practice model practice, about how we best meet the needs of children and families, are those values infused into our California county's practice? And some of the sources of data that we might consider is checking with our CFT facilitator. What does that look like? And in this example, our CFT facilitator told us in our current practice, the IP CANS ratings can help the child and family team get to the deeper needs. They can really try to sort out whether the cause could be medical or mental health related, and it helps everyone on the team get on the same page and get buy-in to the plan. So I'm going to give you just a few seconds to think about, what would the rating be for this? 0, is this a centerpiece strength? Are we incorporating the IP cans into the CFT meeting, following these values and principles and as outlined by the guidance? That's always happening. It happens all the time. That's a 0. That's a centerpiece strength for our California county. Is it happening most of the time? Right? Most of the time this is happening. That's a 1. That means that that's a well-developed strength. Or does it only happen on occasion or it rarely happens? That would be a 2. That would be a strength that needs development. Or does this not happen at all, perhaps? This may be true for probation right now because they're not required to start the IP CANs implementation of that until January 1st. They might be a 3, right? That just isn't currently happening. So that anywhere in that range could be true. And just using this information, what do you think the rating is? 2.4.b, there is interagency collaboration and care coordination in the CFT and IP plans. Issues of confidentiality have been addressed. So again, here are the questions to consider. We can pose these to our team as we're having our conversation. And these are the data sources that we're going to provide to you. So your group can do a little practice around this. I just want to show you how we set this up. We're going to be doing more practice like this in our upcoming, the next session for strategies around CPIP planning. So know that we'll be doing things similar to this. Feel free to take this back to your group to provide some support. I'm going to scroll down. We have the rating scale here along with the flow chart to help your team think about this. And then we've given you the ratings as we see them. So based on that information, the one we went through, that's a 0, right? That's a centerpiece strength. The IP CANS is incorporated and it's part of planning and bringing families to the same page. You'll notice that B, C, and E are rated as 2s. These are strengths that need develop. We need to put some effort into developing these strengths. And then 3 is, tribes are engaged and included. This California county rated this as a 3 because they don't have any tribes in their county. We definitely want to be careful. I worked with a county recently who was like, oh, we don't have any tribes in our county, so we don't need to invite them. And my second question was, are any of your youth placed in tribal, with tribal agencies or with tribal partners or their relatives? And the answer was yes. In fact, they had several children placed with a specific tribal partner out of state. So now they're going to include that partner in the CPIP completion. So I want to think broadly about this following our integrated core practice model values. So then you'll see we created some themes. So this is our assessment, current areas of strength. We see that fidelity to the integration of the IP cans into the meeting. Youth, you would see in the other ones, they're feeling more engaged and heard. These are themes for strength development. More collaboration is needed, clarity about roles and responsibilities, making sure this is a youth and family-centered process and not an agency-centered process, and making sure we have tribal partner and natural support, engagement, and inclusion. And then you'll take these themes and create your priority. We've left this blank so you all can be thinking about it before we come back together in our next meeting next week to go through these in a more in-depth practice. Okay. Emma, if you want to.
Screen share again, Shelley.
Please, thank you.
Awesome. Great, thank you.
Great. So hopefully that helped you understand kind of how the flow and process will look like in the actual CPIP completion team. And then you'll come together and choose those few strategies, probably 2 or 3 strategies, to really focus on the most critical actionable items to make progress with. April or Robin, anything you want to add to that?
No, you're great.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
Want to add that you'll notice when you look at the plan part of the CPIP, there's only 4 spots for a plan, and that is on purpose. You are likely to have many 2s or 3s, especially in completing this first CPIP. But similar to a child welfare case plan, you should not have 25 case plan objectives and 25 plans that you're asking a family to work on. You're going to want to focus your effort and energy on up to 4 goals and strategies that you're going to really come up with a concrete plan for who is going to do what by when to make significant progress on that plan, which hopefully will be reflected in your next CPIP that you will then update on an annual basis. So if it's feeling overwhelming as you're moving through the CPIP completion process and you're noticing that there's a lot of needs, there's a lot of things that your county and system of care is not doing yet, that is okay. And then part of what your group will be doing with the support of a technical assistance provider or whoever is facilitating your CPIP is really coming together and looking at all of those 2s and 3s and saying, okay, what are the ones that are most important for us to focus on targeting first? A lot of what might be the number 1 action item is ensuring that the CANS is completed through a consensus-based process and that the completed CANS is entered into the database system. That's going to be very important for implementation of the tiered rate structure. So hot tip, if that is a 2 or a 3 as you're moving through your CPIP, we highly recommend that you come up with a plan or a strategy around that, because in the absence of that, you're unlikely to be able to get an accurate tiered rate structure rate. Anything else you want to add to that, Shelley?
Yeah, that was such a great reminder. Thank you for pointing that out. And I don't think I said this, that the policing agencies will submit individual plans, right? Because we just know probation and child welfare at this point are at very different stages. And then in coming years, if you're in a more aligned place, then you could submit a combined plan. Even though that's true, we're still in the counties I'm supporting, we're still doing it together, and we're marking probation and child welfare's ratings independently in that section, and then we will create the plan together, because it's really through that conversation that I think the most robust plan will be identified, to Emma's point. Thank you.
And then we do have a question. Is the strategy section similar to the goal, or is the method strategy of how we arrive at the goal? Can we get an example of general strategy that would be in this field?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Emma, that 85 or 90% of the counties will need to make their strategy successful implementation of the consensus built CANS conversation in the CFTM. So, right, so that'll actually be the target improvement goal, right? That's the target improvement goal. So what's the strategy that we're going to do? Does the system of care need to come together to determine what the barriers are? We know behavioral health providers are completing the CANs. We know child welfare and probation are holding CFTs. How do we align the timing? How do we figure out how to make that work? When we have that conversation with the families collaboratively, those should really be pencil scored CANs that were IP CANs that we're coming into, where we're confirming, validating, and modifying our CANs through the process of building that consensus-based CANs, IP CANs conversation. So the strategy will be determined by the team based on where the gap is.
Yeah, so I think that was a really great example, but summary, you all are going to tell us what the strategy is. That's going to be emergent through this process. So if the area, like Shelley gave that example, is around the IP CANs isn't being completed, or it's not done collaboratively, or it's not entered, then you're going to come up with sort of a metric or a goal for to what degree you're going to improve upon that. 90% of IP CANs are completed and entered timely. Maybe that's your target improvement goal. Your baseline performance is that currently 40% of the CANs are completed or entered into your database system. Then what is your strategy to work on that goal? And that's going to depend on your county local system of care. So maybe your strategy is to come up with clear roles and responsibilities for IP CANs completion and entry. Maybe your strategy is that leadership is going to champion the use of the CANs and the purpose of the CANs. So whatever the strategy is, it's going to come from your system of care and your conversations that happen through this process. And then you're going to come up with some specific steps, start date, completion date, and who is responsible for it. So I hope that helps to kind of make it a little bit more concrete. That's a really great question. So thank you.
I'd just also note that we've talked a little bit about like there could be, 50, 60, 70% of the practice fields or the items within the CPIP that may be actionable at a 2 or 3, but not everything that's actionable must be reflected in a strategy, right? You'll choose those that maybe can fit within a strategy together, because we also know that one strategy may impact multiple targets. So just kind of, or topics, putting those in there, but also just knowing that you don't necessarily have to address every single 2 or 3 that's in the CPIP right now, right? Like it's looking internally and determining with your team where you would like to prioritize and things like that. So that's great. But again, yeah, that the 90% timeliness for IP CANs and CFTs is something that CDSS will begin to be monitoring in July 2026. So we know a lot of counties are intending on starting there as well. And just wanted to add that as well. Thanks.
All right, I think this is me. There have been many work groups, as Robin mentioned earlier in our meeting today, that have been working on developing the Fidelity Plan. One of the work groups actually was focused on developing the coaching and technical assistance guides. Um, One of the hardest working work groups that I have been on in quite some time that was made up of the Cal Academies, CDSS, and other stakeholders who came together to really think through how can we create some tools that can be the most helpful to counties around building strengths as identified on the CPIP. So I'm going to show you what these guides are, and they're almost available, as we mentioned earlier, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. So if I could have the screen, thank you. I'm actually going to start by showing you something I missed when I showed you the completion guide for the CPIP. So, oops, wrong thing. Let me try that again. There we go. All right. So this is the CPIP and completion guide, and I'm going to go to Appendix B because it does relate. So Appendix B has the CPIP and all the areas and all the statements, but you'll notice at the end of, at least in the system of care section, there's a blue box that says Associated Coaching and TA Guide, and it has some bullet points that list the titles of the associated TA, the Coaching and TA Guide. And we have that in all the sections. These are the 22 TA activity guides that were created by this lovely work group. And we wanted to put it in the CPIP completion guide so you could easily, when you're at the point of trying to identify some strategies, you can look, hey, we're working on this. Is there a guide around this that could be part of one of our strategies to address this strength that we need to build in the county? So let me go to the actual TA guide. All right, so this is the TA guide, and why can't I just do this? All right, you can see here in the table of contents that each of the CPIP areas are noted here, and you can see all the different guides that were developed under each of the areas. And don't be fooled by the data area. It looks like there's only one guide. There is, but that guide is over 100 pages long, okay? Because it's a collection of walkthroughs for different reports for the CCR dashboard, for safe measures. So so there's a lot of them. So let's look at one of these guides. Let's do a CANS one. So this is the guide for preparing the family and the team around the IP CAN. So it has a description of what this is, the suggested audience. Again, this is supposed to help the county, not necessarily help children and families. So just to refocus some of our expectations. The associated CPIP topic and statements are here, so you know what it's linked to. How long will this take is also listed here. Then it has learning objectives and then different activities. You'll notice in the materials for this particular activity, there's a slide deck that was created. You will have access to that slide deck. We'll talk a little bit about where that is going to be housed. But a lot of them also have links that you can, they're hyperlink. You can just click on them and get to that particular material. So this is how all of them are set up, right? And you can see some of them are pretty hefty. Some of them are shorter, but there are 22 of these TA activities that are here that are available for anyone to use. You could also ask for support to have a TA provider come and help you implement some of these activities. Anything you want to add, Shelley? I'm going to stop sharing.
No, I think that was really good. So when at the end section, when we're creating our strategies and our CPIP plan, this is a great place to consider whether some of these might provide support.
Thanks,
And just
Shelley. And
noting,
have
we're getting a
Robin.
number of questions
Go
in the
ahead.
chat about when it's going to be available, where it's available. It is in the process of being remediated, and it will be available within the next few weeks, hopefully sooner. So we will have it out to you and post it online shortly, and we can circle back probably with an email when it is.
And I just wanted to offer that you should be thinking about utilizing the guides after you complete your CPIP. So completion of your CPIP will help to illuminate where are there needs for further guidance, training, practice, skill development. And that is when you would utilize the guides to then address that particular challenge or need that you've identified through the completion of your county practice and improvement plan. So that's why they're not quite yet available. We needed to prioritize everything related to this, the completion of the CPIP, the guide for the CPIP, training people to be able to facilitate that process. But you really want to use the CPIP process as that baseline or needs assessment. And then the guides can again be utilized as part of one of your potential strategies to address that need or challenge that's identified.
Thank you. That's a great call out, Emma. I appreciate that. Yeah, the guides will be soon, but don't let that stop you from diving into the CPIP completion now. Because as she said, these can be used as you can use them as is for strategies. You can use them to tailor the strategies to fit your needs. All of the guides and the materials in here will be adaptable to tailor them and tweak them to the specific needs of the county. And this can be done in collaboration with a TA provider or internally through the county as well.
All right, I think maybe this is me, or is this you, Robin?
I think it's you, but either ways.
Okay, so we have actually pretty much wrapped up content for today. So I just want to provide space and opportunity for anyone who has additional questions to please share those in the chat. We have answered 23 questions live through the Q&A feature. So if you haven't had a chance to look through those for the questions and answers, please do. We have also responded to multiple questions through the chat, so feel free to cruise back up in the chat to look for questions and answers. We are collecting all the Q&As from all of the webinars and learning labs and working on putting them into one combined document. I believe the document or the link for today's webinar has the prior Q&A. If it doesn't, I can add it to that shortly. But we have made that available from our last couple of webinars. A couple of the themes that I just wanted to lift up from today's Q&As, there were a lot of questions around the process of completing the CPIP, how long it takes, who could guide folks through completing the CPIP, and how to access technical assistance. So I just want to reiterate or summarize that the County Practice and Improvement Plan is designed to be a collaborative, consensus-based process completed through the guidance of a facilitator. That facilitator can absolutely be an internal staff person, but you do need someone who's kind of guardrailing and supporting the team through completing this process, scheduling meetings to go through it. We strongly recommend that if you are that person, if your county has said, Shelley, we would love it if you help us to complete our CPIP, that you come to one of the CPIP facilitator trainings. I think we had about 60 people who came to the first one. I feel like it went really well. We have another offering coming up in October. I think it's October 17th. So next Friday, please come if you can. Then if you're already rocking and rolling, you've already started hosting these sessions, we would love to see you in the learning community that is launching on Monday. That's not a traditional training. It's really meant to be more of a conversational space for folks who are guiding counties, child welfare, probation, behavioral health through this process to come together, talk about what's working, where are we seeing challenges and barriers, and how can we learn from each other throughout that process. Anyone can be the CPIP facilitator, doesn't again have to be a technical assistance provider, but if you're hearing everything that we've shared in these last couple of webinars or 3 now, and it feels a little bit overwhelming, you're not sure if you have time to facilitate this process, to bring everyone together, to figure out who should be a part of it, we do strongly recommend that you submit a request for technical assistance, even if the technical assistance is just one meeting for us to kind of reiterate what we've talked about today and help you to think about how to create your own internal structure. We are happy to provide that level of support. Maybe the technical assistance support that you want is to actually work on an ongoing basis with a technical assistance provider. We have been working on increasing the number of folks that we have available, ensuring that we have people who are parts of our TA team who have experience both in juvenile probation and county behavioral health, as well as child welfare. So if you're worried that if you come to us for TA, it's all going to be a bunch of former caseworkers, I promise you, we've done a lot of good work to make sure our team is representative of our system of care. So reach out, utilize that TA request form. It's the best way for us to track all of the responses and make sure we are responding in an appropriate period of time. Okay, so where we're at today is that we have just completed, yay, our 3rd webinar. We have a follow-up learning lab scheduled on Wednesday, October 15th. So that's next week on Wednesday from 11:30 to 1. The learning labs are a traditional Zoom meeting, so you can come off mute, we can see you, you have full use of the chat. It's a little more interactive. So that's a great place for you to come if you have additional questions that you would like to answer. And in that space, we will also be doing more practice activities. So we'll be really working through some scenarios and helping to think about, based on information gathered through the CPIP, how can you then use that to guide through completing a plan? So come to that if you are able. I imagine Sahar shared the link in the chat, but if she didn't, it will be there shortly. We have 2 more webinars scheduled. We have the Child and Family Team Meeting Observation Tool and the Child and Family Team Meeting Summary and Action Plan coming up on Thursday, November 13th from 10 to 12. That will be co-facilitated by myself, Joanne Pritchard on our Northern Academy team, and Robin Emme. I did see some questions earlier about the CFT meeting summary and action plan. So it's a great opportunity to come and learn more about that. The CFT meeting observation tool is also, like, no shade on all the other tools, my favorite fidelity tool. It's a really great way to get in the room with families, to be in a child and family team meeting, and to have a structured tool to be able to observe that process and say, these are all the areas where your process is already at fidelity and you're doing incredible work to engage and partner with families. And here are some of the spaces where further work is needed to get to fidelity or to adhere to the intended model. So come to that. We'll have another follow-up learning lab on Tuesday, November 18th. Then we've got a little bit of a break because we've got the Thanksgiving holiday. And we will be wrapping up our series with Supporting Fidelity, Available Resources and Data Sources on Wednesday, December 10th from 9 to 11. We will have a follow-up learning lab Wednesday, December 17th from 11 to 1. You'll notice that that learning lab is a little bit longer than the rest of them, and that is on purpose. We imagine that hopefully by then, most folks are really deep into working on their CPIPs, thinking about their CPIPs. So we wanted to create a little bit of extra space and time to explore that with you all when you come to that one. Then finally, this is where you can find more information, more links. This is also in that standalone 2-page links in the chat document for the materials for today. And Robin, if you can also drop the CDSS email in the chat, I think that might be helpful. I just want to take a moment to share a huge thank you. Thank you so much to Shelley, April, and Robin for your phenomenal presentation today. Thank you for walking us through how the CPIP connects to county plans. Another huge round of gratitude to Allison Hendrix. Allison, if you're still with us, if you can take your camera on so we can give you some claps and kudos. Allison, we really appreciate you sharing your experience as someone who is working at a county, navigating new guidance, receiving support through technical assistance. I think it's always really helpful when we can kind of ground all these big conceptual things that we're talking about with someone's actual experience receiving this support and service. So thank you, Allison. And thank you to the incredible CDSS team who kept up with lots of questions today through the Q&A feature. I know it is a lot of work, so thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate your presence and participation. Don't log off yet because we have a couple of questions that we would like to ask of you all. Sahar, if you can please share that Mentimeter link in the chat, that would be so helpful. And we're going to walk you through a few questions about today's webinar. So the first question is on a scale of 1 to 5. How would you rate today's Fidelity webinar in helping you to understand fidelity requirements for IP cans and CFTs? So that 1 would be that this webinar was not at all useful. You did not find out anything more about the fidelity requirements. A 5 would be that it was really useful. You learned a lot. It really helped to clarify some questions that you might have. I guess it says actually extremely useful. That maybe sounds like a little bit of an extreme statement. So if we can get a few more responses here, that's super helpful. Looks like we got about 50 of our 130 people who have responded to that question. So a couple more is most appreciated. Awesome. We're at about 60. Next question here. What aspect of today's webinar did you find most useful and why? This really helps us to be able to think about what can we continue to do in these webinars, what's really landing and helping you as participants. And Paul, I see in the chat that you can't do the Mentimeter. If you can't, you can feel free to respond through the chat too to any of these questions. We also accept your feedback that way. So what was most helpful about today? People appreciating the tools, definitions, reminders of timelines, guidance, appreciation of seeing and viewing the documents, how to access technical assistance, seeing the interaction between Shelley and Ashley, or maybe Allison, going through the CPIP, all of it, Q&A, hearing more about the role of a TA provider, examples of how to complete the tools, CDSS acknowledging that this is kind of overwhelming, appreciate that. Reviewing tools, timeline, Q&A. Awesome. We are collecting these at each webinar, so please continue to provide feedback as we go. And then I'm going to advance to my next question. Please rate your increase of the following fidelity tools: the County Practice and Improvement Plan, or CPIP, and technical assistance, also sometimes referred to as TA. So a 1 would be that your understanding increased not at all. And again, a 5 would be that you had a significant increase in understanding. What we provided today really helped you to understand more about the CPIP and or technical assistance. Looking for a few more responses here. If we can get to half of people responding, it's super helpful. Again, the link is in the chat, or you can go to menti.com, code 29635044. All right. Looks like we had a pretty good increase in knowledge, so I'm grateful to see that. Do you plan to attend the follow-up learning lab on Wednesday, October 15th, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m.? The response options are yes, no, or unsure. Paul, I see your response in the chat. Great. We are thrilled you can join us again. Looks like quite a few of you are planning to come to the follow-up learning lab. Awesome. 36 people. We are excited to see you again there. And speaking of the learning lab, what questions do you have for the learning lab on 10/15? Or what suggestions might you have for what we can discuss or practice in that learning lab? Any suggestions for what we can bring to that space that will be really helpful for you? And again, a friendly reminder that we see your hands raised, but we cannot unmute you. So if you do have a suggestion and you can't access the Mentimeter, please share that in the chat or in the Q&A. So it looks like folks are maybe not quite sure, going over examples, shared struggles, being able to participate, seeing some examples. Oh, I like this one. How to get started on CPIP, meaning timing of meeting frequency, who to invite, etc. I know that Shelley will be facilitating that learning lab in partnership with the team, and she actually has a really helpful document that she has created that kind of like explains all of those things that can be used to really help to inform the timing and frequency of meetings. I see samples of how the 3 sessions incorporate multiple meetings, maybe some examples of strategies, suggestions on how departments can create policies, and how can counties keep all of this information straight? Great questions and suggestions for what to bring. How soon will we get TA after it has been requested? Ongoing discussions and tips. Awesome. Lastly, what can we improve for our next Fidelity webinar? So this is that what can we change or do differently question. Would love some suggestions for you because we have 2 more of these to go. So anything we can do differently in our structure or approach to the next Fidelity webinar, which will be in November. Seeing more info on the Fidelity requirements that start in April. Good news, that is the focus of our next Fidelity webinar. So I know that we've talked a lot about the CPIP process because that is due on January 1st. Again, the focus of our next Fidelity webinar will be the CFT meeting observation tool and the CFT meeting action plan, which are those requirements that begin in 2026. So grateful to be able to provide that for you all. Some suggestions about slides, documents, and materials in advance. I think that's a great suggestion, and we'll see what we can do about that. Maybe a little too much today on the recaps. That's a good suggestion. Thinking about some suggestions, how to make it more interactive and just uplifting that we are throwing a whole lot at you all at once. So I appreciate that feedback as well. All right, we have reached the end of my presentation, so I am going to stop screen sharing. Again, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for your generous and honest feedback. Our goal with this series is to make this new process and requirements as digestible and easy to understand as possible. So we appreciate you partnering with us on this journey, and we hope to see you again soon.